Last week we were told that the Exodite episode 2 would be delayed for a few days. It turns out it was delayed an entire week to this week's content drop. Now, it probably had a knock-on effect to whatever was scheduled this week, because there's hardly ever more than 2 shows a week. So I'm hoping that this is a precursor to them rolling out one of each show every week, as well as an animation every 2 weeks. I really hope they can hurry it up though, because I'm dying here with only 2 things to talk about each week. This might be a very short episode. 2 things became very apparent from reading the comments from last week. Number 1, Games Workshop get a much easier ride of things if their communication is better. Not a free ride, but a much easier ride, fewer negative comments. Number 2, a lot of people will be happy if they keep to their roadmap and they deliver 1 show a week plus an animation every second week. And I just hope that we can go in that direction and Games Workshop can fulfil their promises. Well done everyone, we fixed everything single-handedly. I am of course joking, but I would like to think that Games Workshop has taken a note of our feedback over the weeks and has taken at least some small consideration over them in making their plans for the future. So since we're kind of in a holding pattern waiting for Games Workshop to ramp up the content, I'll just get straight into the reviews, and we'll start off with Warhammer Vault. Now, a weird thing happened with Warhammer Vault. I was flicking through doing my usual reading, seeing what was available for this week, and I noticed all the books had disappeared. Now, if you scroll down for maybe 20 rows, you'll notice that all the books are now in November. So it seems like it's sorted by date order, and if you change the date on the book, then it changes position on the page. So all the books, apart from the newest one for today, have been moved into November for some strange reason, and I can't understand why that's been done. But if you're thinking the books have disappeared, they've not. They're just further down the page. It's very, very strange. The book for today is Imperial Armour Volume 8, and it's really good if you're an orc player. It's got a lot of inspiration. I've found that these older books are really inspiring for paint jobs and conversions. Not that I've done any, mind you, but if I did, then I'd be looking at these for inspiration. This time the looted vehicles, and all the Orky vehicles, all the conversions look fantastic. There's also Imperial Guard and Space Marines in here, but it really belongs to the orcs. There's loads of inspiration, so if you're making an orc army, I'd suggest reading this book anyway. There's also the now standard 2 white dwarfs, which is down from 4. The battle report, as usual, was great. It was 2,000 points of Eldar versus Grey Knights, and it was between Simon and Nick Baton. Now, we really got to see all the new models in action. We got to see what height the Avatar is. So he's the same height as a Dread Knight, a Grey Knight Dread Knight. So that'll only mean something to you if you know what height a Dread Knight is in the first place. But if not, you'll be none the wiser. The quality of this show is actually outstanding. I watched it on my big TV and it's indistinguishable from a professionally created, I know it is professionally created, but a normal TV show. It's really good. You can watch play on tabletop and things like that on the TV, but I think this one might even be a tiny wee step above that. Really enjoyable watching. I must admit the Grey Knight army looked quite tired now, because they must be quite old, but the new Eldar army just looked incredible. The Exodite episode 2, Inferno, was a bit of a rollercoaster ride if I'm honest. There was a lot of good stuff in there, but there was also some bad stuff. The animation and the visuals are absolutely amazing. Couldn't really be happier with them. There was a few weird moments, but I think it's probably just because we're not used to the Tau and how alien they are. So their ships were hovering in the air, but they weren't moving. You would expect a bit of movement there. There was no camera movement or anything, so it was a bit eerie when they just hovered and then missiles streaked out of them. It just looked a bit... It was either bad animation or really good animation, and I can't decide which. The dialogue was a bit stilted, but I guess that's something we have to get used to. I mean, we're dealing with alien races. They're not really meant to be speaking English, so it's going to be a bit different to what we're used to. So I think that's just something that we have to accept going forward. I believe that in the Exodite it was meant to be subtitles at first, and I think that would have worked better, to be honest. Instead of shoehorning English into the Tau way of speaking, I think the subtitles would have come across a lot better. Plus, there were some really, really cheesy lines, and I think if I read those, I wouldn't have cringed as hard as when I heard them. There were some incredible moments, and I don't think this is a spoiler because we saw it in the trailer, but there were some Warlord Titans, and at first I thought, they've made them really small, but it turns out they were just really far away. So when you get up close to them and there's another unit to compare to, they are absolutely massive. And they were about as effective as you'd expect a Warlord to be, so that was great. Got to see Lehman Russies, we got to see Krieg, which was a surprise. I did think the Tau were really fragile in this though. The whole thing kind of reminds me of when we were in the early days of 3D rendered movies. We had great visuals, great technology behind it, but the story wasn't quite there yet, and I feel that we're in the early days of all these things, so the story's not quite there, it's not keeping up with the visuals, but we're only in episode 2, so that could entirely change depending on what happens in the next however many episodes. So it is an exciting time, but I'm not quite sold on it just yet. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about it. I've had a comment already on one of my older videos that basically backed up what I'm thinking. I don't want to dismiss it, I think it looks fantastic, it's a real rush to see that kind of Warhammer 40k coolness on screen, but it's not quite there yet for me. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this week. I'd love to hear what you thought about this week's offerings. I would have loved a masterclass at least, maybe to paint some more Eldar stuff. I can totally understand having a few lean weeks when they're ramping up the amount of content we're going to get in the future, but that ramp up had better be weeks rather than months, because after that it just becomes a bit ridiculous and all we're doing is getting a lot less for our money and just accepting it, so I don't think that will happen for very long. Anyway, let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and once again, thanks for watching, happy hobbying, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.